Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. Wanted to do a little video here and show you guys a little tip to keep your power equipment running. It was one of the first things that I ever learned when it came to engines when I was a young boy, actually. The old timers always had little tricks and little hacks to get things running. And when it comes to power equipment, when you live that self-sufficient lifestyle or you live the rural lifestyle, a lot of things revolve around power equipment and your equipment running. And power equipment runs on a few things. You got to have air, you got to have fuel, and you got to have spark. And this video here in particular didn't come off of the top of my head. It came from one of my longtime subscribers and longtime commenters, one of my friends, Glenn. He mentioned this in one of the comments a couple videos back, and I said, you know what, that's a good tip for a video, and I wanted to do a video on it, but I wanted to give him kudos for sort of bringing this up. And what I'm talking about is spark plugs. Now, spark plugs are one of those things. I keep a lot of spark plugs here. I keep spark plugs here for my chainsaws, generator, four-wheeler, rototiller, all my power equipment that I would need if something would go wrong. I keep spare spark plugs. But what if you're out in the bush cutting wood, you're on your four-wheeler, the thing, falls a plug out, doesn't run? What the old timers would do is they would actually take a piece of emery cloth or sandpaper, and they would actually sand the electrode on the end of this here to clean that up enough so you could get back and actually service it right. And, it's one of those things when it comes to an SHTF situation. If something happens, you can't get your equipment running, it's one of those simple fixes that might pull you along far enough where you can get it fixed. And there's a couple different ways that they clean these. They did it with the emery cloth. They did it with little tools. Like this guy here, it's got a little brush on it. This is actually a spark plug tool. I'm going to show you a couple different ones here, but it would have some kind of brush on here where they could clean that off. And another thing that they would do is if you had a particularly cold-blooded piece of equipment, they would pull the spark plug out and they would actually heat the spark plug up with either a torch or a cigarette lighter to warm this plug up and give that engine a little bit of a oomph to get it going. And another thing too with a cigarette lighter, you got to hold it, of course, with pliers or something so you don't burn your hands. But sometimes if it's fouled out, if you put a little heat on it on an open flame, that will clean these up as well. But the thing that they used a lot was stuff like this, and this is like a little roll of emery cloth. And this emery cloth, they actually use this to like rough up copper fittings when they're going to solder stuff, but it's almost the perfect size to fit in between, just like that, and you could sand these off and get yourself a little bit of a crisp edge on get a crisper edge on that electrode there. And then they would wipe that off good, make sure everything's cleaned up as best they can, and then they would put that back in the engine and see if that would help the spark. It's never going to be like a new spark plug, but it can help you out in a pinch to get that stuff running, to either finish your job or get you out of, if you're back in the woods 5-6 miles and your machine dies, it's a pain, it's a pain to get that going. It was just one of those things. Another thing that they would use, where they would use emery cloth that looked like this, they would have sheets of it, and they would tear off little squares and throw them into their toolboxes. But most of the time what I seen, it was stuff like this. It was the little round up rolls that helped a lot. And between that and using some type of fire source like a cigarette lighter or a torch, they could burn off and they could clean off these leads on spark plugs. And then the other thing that they would do after they would sand that, of course, your gap's going to increase, so then they would have to re-gap that spark plug. So then they would use tools like this. That's what these little notches are on there for. You can adjust your spark plug gap, and they had brushes on, and then they had your different gauges to gap your spark plugs. And then this is the other kind here, kind of more common kind that looks sort of like a jackknife, and then each one of the gauges in here is a different thickness. And then this is another style here, and what it is it's basically just a slant from thicker to thinner all the way across there, and then you use that. See if I can show you here. You use that, slide that in there, and then that gives you your gauge on your spark plug gap. So, you know, and you got bad spark plugs like this, keep an engine from running, but these little tips and tricks here will get the engine back running again so you can get back to, you know, a decent place where you can do some real repairs on it. But keep spark plugs. If you have, you know, a gas or propane generator, you got a four-wheeler that you use to, you know, get around with that takes gas. Sometimes these plugs get fouled up, and usually the two main reasons is something wrong with the fuel, or you have some type of oil burning problem, blow by. And actually, this one here is a little bit duller. I don't know if you can tell that on there, but this one's a little bit duller. Usually, in my experience, that a duller sheen on the fouling is fuel, and then this one here is a little bit more glossy and shiny, and that's typically oil. So that's kind of tells you the difference on that. But if you've never seen that before, you know, I might have people on my channel that don't know a lot about engines, but that right there, if you got an engine that doesn't run, you pull the spark plug out, it looks like this. That might be your problem. And if you got a little sandpaper, a little emery cloth like this here, you can clean that up, you know, wipe it down with a piece of cloth afterward, take a little flame and burn the end of that off, clean these up a little bit. The spark might be a little better, get you out of a bad situation, at least get you, you know, home where you can do the repairs correctly. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Wanted to touch base on this with you guys here today. I want to thank my friends at the shop for giving me some old junky spark plugs here to show you guys, and I want to thank Glenn for bringing that topic up so I could do a video on it. But anyway, appreciate you guys out there. Hope you guys always get something out of my videos here. It's another tool to add to your toolbox. You guys have a good one.